Township Planning Commission, April 15th, 2019. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:30. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, please, Mr. Secretary.
Bart Kahn. Here. Darrell Lewandowski. Here. TJ McLaughlin.
Here.
Pamela Lowe.
Here.
Bruce Reed. Here. Robert Rizzo.
Here.
Daniel Bagari.
Here.
Thank you. All present and counted.
Okay. Approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted for April 15th, 2019.
Second the motion.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Five, public comment. Mr. Walsey.
Yes, I noticed there's two public hearings tonight, but unfortunately I couldn't find any of the information regarding either item attached to the agenda on the township website. Was there a reason for that? I guess my question would be then is, I mean, how could the public expect to comment on something if they don't have the information on a public hearing?
Was it on there?
It was in the newspaper.
The material.
The material we usually put on the website.
For the planning agenda, sometimes and sometimes not, but for the board preferably.
It's always available at Township Hall if somebody's interested in coming in, they can email us, but I guess we didn't put it on the internet. We didn't put the entire packet on the internet. So.
I did not put it on the internet. I apologize, Mr. Walsey, but if it's something that you want, I can definitely get it for you.
Well,
sometimes I do put it online, and this time I didn't. I apologize for that.
Specifically a public hearing, and I certainly would expect the planning commission to make sure that it was on, available to the public. Again, I mean, it's a public hearing. How do you expect the public to speak to something that they don't have the information for?
Well, I think she's saying that if it's not on the website, you can get it through the township. You should probably make sure unless there's a particular reason why we can't get it on, but we'll get it out there.
Dave, we've been down this road before. I mean, one of you guys should have made sure it was on there.
We all have our packets, so does everyone have their packet here?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else public comment? Okay. Number 6, new business items. Public hearing 19-002, Johnson rezoning. Do you have?
Yeah, my microphone's not working, so I'm going to try to speak loudly. The applicant has submitted a request for rezoning from office commercial to, office residential to, no, it is office commercial, I'm sorry, to agricultural residential. This is for a parcel known as A-01-0300-300-044. This is Thomas R. Johnson. You all may be familiar with this particular piece of land. It's right at the corner of North Territorial and Pontiac Trail, because the petitioner was in just last year for the parcel that they also own just south of this, which they did the similar rezoning from OC to AR. They own a piece of land off of Dutch Hill Drive that's adjacent to this parcel. That's also owned, zoned AR, where their residence is. They own the parcel to the north of that as well, right on North Territorial, which is zoned and used for office commercial. That's where he runs his dental practice. So the particular piece of land in question is roughly 1.55 acres. What will ultimately be the case if this is rezoned is that there will be a continuous piece of land, zone AR, including the residential piece where they currently live, on Dutch Hill, the piece that's the subject parcel, as well as the piece to the south along Pontiac Trail. So that they'll ultimately have roughly 6.5 acres of land, all zoned AR, which ultimately they'd like to combine together to make all part of their one residential piece of property. Recently, they did go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. You can actually see on your report, on my report, an aerial photo. I've highlighted the parcel in question. They recently went to the Zoning Board of Appeals and asked for a variance to allow for a third accessory structure on their property. Currently, on the residential piece where the home is, they have an historic barn and a historic shed, neither of which really serve the purpose for which they'd like to use their accessory structure, but they don't want to remove those because of the historic nature of those. I believe the office that they use for the dental practice is also a historic building itself. So there is some historic significance. They're not necessarily registered, but they do want to maintain those structures. So they were granted the variance. The variance was to place this structure on the parcel that was rezoned a year ago, but in order to have that accessory structure, they would need to combine them all. So we suggested that they needed to get a rezoning for this one, so that when they combined them, they all had a continuous zoning category. So that's the process that they're in. We suggested they go to the ZBA first to make sure that they could get that variance before they went through the exercise of doing rezoning and then doing the land combination. As part of the land combination, what they're proposing to do is to actually straighten that parcel out a little bit so that there's less of a jog in the lines there. So we find that to be a beneficial piece of this whole process. So on the third page of my report, I show you the current zoning map, which shows the parcel zoned as zoned as OC. And then the master plan, which indicates generally everything in the area to be AR, except there is a kind of node indicated at the corner, which has been considered local commercial. So the intent being that the parcels right around that corner could be used for local commercial. We feel that the zoning pattern in general for this area is large lot residential, so we're suggesting that that AR zoning is consistent with much of the surrounding development pattern. So depending on what an owner wanted to do or what they were looking at in conjunction with that corner, or associating this parcel more with the residential area, it could kind of go either way, so we find this to be consistent either way. This was rezoned by the applicant to OC back in '91. There has been no development. There's been no pressure to develop this for the OC use. Similar findings that you all made last year when you looked at that other parcel. So if it remained with the current zoning, they could do something that was permitted in the OC district. Likely it would be a strip of offices or something like that. There are no utilities there, so it would all be subject to the ability to get that land perk. So with the residential zoning, if they were to combine that with the existing home, it would be consistent with kind of large lot residential uses there. Their accessory building would certainly also be consistent, and it would maintain that as open space in that area. With the zoning, rezoning requirements in the zoning ordinance, it requires that you do hold a public hearing, which is what you're doing tonight. And then it also suggests that you go through the findings for a rezoning in section 68.05. And so that includes an evaluation of the existing zoning and the development pattern. As I said a moment ago, this appears to be consistent with the development pattern. The apparent demand, again, it doesn't appear that there's any apparent demand for office commercial in this area. It's been zoned that way for 20 years, and there's been no development pressure. There's been nothing proposed for the area, so we don't see that as being an apparent demand. And then number C, availability of public services and infrastructure. Again, there's no utilities in this area, so it's really, the ability to develop this land is dependent on the ability for that area to perk. From the standpoint of vehicular access, having this joined with an existing residential is going to be a much lower impact from a transportation standpoint to the intersection as well as the local roads in that area. Compatibility, much of the surrounding area is vacant or developed with single-family homes, so the use that they're proposing is consistent. Consistency with the master plan, again, I went over the indication in the future land use plan. Much of the area in that surrounding area is proposed for agricultural residential. It's only that node at the intersection that suggests local commercial. So that we would suggest that you go through those findings on your own after the public hearing's over and make sure you concur with those or come to a conclusion of your own. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this.
I got one, Paul.
Okay, so do we open the public hearing now?
If they have some specific questions, they could ask them now, or you could go right into the public hearing, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. Should we do the public hearing if the public has to say first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing, 19-002 Johnson rezoning. Review.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor of opening public hearing 19-002 Johnson rezoning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The public hearing is open. Secretary, would you like to do the report for the 3 minutes?
I can try.
Keeper?
Okay, well. Okay.
Okay. Any comments? Questions? Okay. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Johnson rezoning petition. We gotta close.
You gotta close your public hearing.
Oh, we can't do it during the public hearing, okay.
Okay. So, if the public doesn't have any questions, then we will close it and then have our discussion.
Make a motion to close the public hearing, 19-002 Johnson rezoning request. As of 7:44 p.m.
I'll second. I second the motion.
I think Bruce was first.
Was Bruce? Oh, no,
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's okay. Bruce will be second. Okay, all those in favor of closing the public hearing for 19-002 Johnson rezoning at 7:44, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Hearing is closed.
Okay.
We should have it open for discussion now.
Agricultural residential, we have a 2-acre minimum, so we basically saying this is a temporary situation because we know that we're trying to join it with the other property.
Yes, so I guess that would have to happen simultaneously.
Yeah, I think we should just put something in there that temporary and pending.
Because they've got the application in for the lot combination already, so we would do that before we forward it to the board.
And just to be clear, looking at this, what is the property this is being adjoined with? The blue outline is going to, that's the part that's getting rezoned. What is it attaching to? And I guess there's street numbers here. There's a 52 or
5240 is Dutch Hill.
okay.
To the east, immediately to the east.
Okay.
And then 5832 is on Pontiac Trail, immediately to the south.
Oh, it's added to both.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a 1.55, including front edge and everything. What's the other one? 5832.
So the total The lot size would be.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
It would be 6 acres total.
So it's pulling all those three to a 6 acre total.
Yep.
Yeah. So there, okay.
Hey, Paul, does the dental office still remain OC zoning?
Yes.
And what's gonna happen with the two little triangle bits up there just north of the subject property?
So the triangles are currently part of this parcel. So ultimately, this parcel is actually almost 2 acres because it was previously a AR district. But as part of their proposed rezoning, part of their lot combination, they're going to do a boundary adjustment along that property line. So they would take those two triangle pieces and combine them with the office use on the corner to try to make that more of a normal lot line there.
So what we're proposing is rezoning of this 1.55, not the 1.89.
Correct.
Okay, so it's a split and a rezoning. And then the other
boundary adjustment, but that's done administratively. So, again, back to what I said earlier, the kind of process was a little tedious on which way for them to go. They went to the ZBA first to make sure that before they went to the trouble to do this, they were able to get that variance, and then they're doing the rezoning and the lot
You're
combination.
throwing two things up in the air at the same time and landing them all. Right. Okay. So it's a 1.55 is being rezoned. The remaining two little bits of triangle stay office commercial, and they get joined with the front where the dental office is.
Correct.
Perfect. Thanks.
No problem.
Anyone else?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Johnson rezoning petition, file number 19-002, for parcel with tax ID number A-01-30-300-044 to the Township Board based on the findings in the Township Planners Report dated April 9th, 2019.
I second it.
Okay,
Roll call for that?
sure.
Okay. Roll call vote. Bart Conn.
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski.
Yes.
E.J. Malone.
Yes.
Pamela Lowe.
Yes.
Bruce Reed was yes. Robert Rizzo.
Yes.
And Dan Gary. Yes.
Okay. Now, 6B, public hearing for the master plan. You have three.
Yes, so, as you all know, you've been working on this for quite some time. And the last action you took was to make a recommendation to the Township Board to distribute a plan for the required 63-day review period. The board did accept the plan and authorize the distribution for the review period. That period has since expired. During that time, we did send the plan as required by the Planning Enabling Act to all of our neighboring jurisdictions, to the utilities who have registered in the township, and to the county. We received comments back from them as well as the general public. We received 2 letters back. Those were both included in the packets along with a memo. And at this point, based on the act, you're required to hold a public hearing to take any final comments before adoption of the plan. So that's what we're doing tonight. We've scheduled that public hearing. Noticed it in the paper and sent notification to those same entities, the neighboring jurisdictions, etc. And I have included a draft resolution of adoption in your packets. So if tonight you decide that it's appropriate to make that adoption, you could use that resolution. It's required to be placed inside the front cover of the document. And once that's done, then we would forward it onto the board, and we would forward it back out to those other entities as required by the Planning Enabling Act. Now, at tonight's meeting, if there are any changes that you would like to make, you could make that as part of your motion as well. In terms of minor adjustments to the plan or things that you found that you want to add based on comments from the public or comments received from letters that you've received. I will note that I got one comment from the township attorney, just a minor adjustment. Where we left something in, we still referenced Hamlet as a urban service district area, but everything else related to urban service district area is that area around 14 Goddard. So if
Ms.
you
Montagno, could you speak to the microphone, please?
I would, but it's not working.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'll try to speak louder.
Thank you.
So ultimately, I would recommend that if you do go for an approval tonight, you would do it with the condition that we make that, at least that one change on page 95. And I can spell that out for you at such time as you want.
Okay, at 7:51, 7:52, okay. I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing, dash master plan at 7:52 p.m.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of opening the public hearing for the master plan at 7:52, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The public hearing is open.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Comments? Mr. Walsey?
Yes, in regard to the low-density residential district, I believe you're changing that proposed district from the URL1 district, where those established residential neighborhoods are just south of North Territory between Napier and Goffredson. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe we're maintaining consistency with what was there.
Yes, it seems fairly consistent. I would ask though, and I believe the low-density residential is the same low-density residential that's already in our ordinances, correct? There's a little bit of the wording has changed in there, and I'm not sure that it needs to be corrected or not. It's specific in our ordinances now. It's adamant that it says 1 dwelling unit per acre. In the master plan, it doesn't confirm that in the wording there, and I think that's important to note that. Because in some of the other residential districts in there, you're adamant of how many dwellings per acre, or what the density is in there. So I think that was just a minor oversight in that regard. And if you could check that out, I appreciate it. I think that was page 80, I believe it was, if the board wants to look at it, page 79. Under low density residential, it's under residential uses, page 79 of your draft ordinances. And if you, you'd have to compare it to, the low density residential that's already in our ordinances, and it's not consistent with that. That's all I'm asking you to do. If you could bring it consistent with that, I'd appreciate that. I think that was your intention, am I correct? To have that area 1 dwelling unit per acre, or single family residential, I mean, is what I meant.
Mr. Walsey, are you asking that, okay, under low density residential, the second sentence there, these lots are typically 1 acre in size or larger? That's You're just asking for something to be more specific than that?
It's supposed to say single-family residential there. That's, maybe I misspoke, apologize. In our ordinance.
Oh, it's single-family residential,
Yeah, that's
not
supposed to,
residential.
it's supposed to say single-family residential, and it doesn't in there. Because in our ordinances, it says single-family residential. Nowhere in there does it specify single-family residential. I'm sure that's your intention for that area, am I correct?
I'm happy to answer the question after the public hearing's over and at the direction of the planning commission.
Was that the intention of the planning commission?
Well, TJ's got something to contribute. I think she'll explain. We'll get all the questions out.
Yeah.
This is just public comment. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead.
Any other questions,
Yeah,
comments?
wasn't finished.
Oh, okay, well then go ahead.
Oh, okay. And also in regard to the interconnected road system in the Urban Services District, we had considerable discussion about that. And in our area, I live in that low-density residential district, established district in there. And it talks about interconnecting the roads so you have access to other parts of the Urban Services District. And if you go into the streets and roads, I think it still implies that's possibly the intent of the master plan or that district, to have some sort of interconnecting roads in there. I think we talked about that before, that it wouldn't be appropriate to have commercial traffic or some other type of a high density use traffic come into a residential district. So I'm not sure if it's your intention to use our existing streets and roads to access other parts of the Urban Services District or have other streets connect to ours. I certainly would not want that, and I don't believe any of my other neighbors would want that as well. It just wouldn't make sense, because you have other specific wording in there too, that your intent is to protect the existing land uses in the Urban Services District, such as ourselves, as well as those outside the district. So if you allow excessive traffic to come into our area, or unwanted traffic, you certainly aren't protecting the existing land uses. It sort of contradicts that. So you'd have to go under streets and roads and see I'd like to know, what are your intentions for the existing streets and roads and driveways in there where we live?
You have another one? We're making a list, Mr. Walsey.
No, I didn't get a chance to go through it because I actually was able to find it, but not until, when I wanted to, the copy of that draft master plan, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to look through it. But right now, that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
One other one before you close it.
Sure.
I can get somebody else here. According to what Mr. Montagno said, in past practice has been throughout the years, as long as I can remember, it's been the Planning Commission has adopted the master plan. And I understand now through the Zoning Enabling Act, the board can adopt the master plan. I don't know if that's mandate or not. I think they have the option to adopt it or not. Has there been a decision made whether the Planning Commission is ultimately going to adopt the master plan? Or will they make a recommendation to the board, and then will the board ultimately adopt the master plan? That's all I have, thank you.
Mrs. Hamilton.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for the process they used in updating and amending this master plan. They were very willing to listen to the public, to work with us, to hear our comments, and I'd like to thank you for all those months that you did that. And to the comments about roads and not allowing commercial vehicles on roads, and understand there's a difference between through traffic, but commercial vehicles do need to get down most residential roads. People take deliveries all the time that require large trucks. And so when you're considering the earlier comments about roads, and I'm sure you already all know that because you take deliveries in your home, that there is a need many times to get large vehicles down roads. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions,
Another one.
close the public.
Maybe I was misunderstood. I didn't mean commercial traffic as in commercial vehicles. I meant traffic caused by commercial activities, excessive. Say there's a commercial strip mall and you get all that excessive traffic coming into a residential district. I think that would completely disrupt the quality of life of the people that live in a residential district, and I think it's unnecessary, and it's not the way that needs to be designed. I didn't mean commercial traffic. Sure, I have UPS come down my road, I have, deliveries come down my road, I think that goes without saying. Thank you.
Okay. No other comments? Okay, do we have a motion to close?
Motion to close the public hearing at 8:02 PM on the public hearing on the master plan.
I'll second
Okay. All those in favor of closing the public hearing for the master plan at 8:02, say aye.
it. Aye.
Opposed? None. The public hearing is closed. Okay. Did you have a comment? Do you want to use my microphone?
No.
You were going to comment on a single.
Oh, well, I was trying to, well, first I was, trying to find the page you were talking about on the residential usage.
Page 80?
Because, well, I see on 79, it does say low-density residential,
Yeah.
and then 1 acre in size or larger, and then the paragraph below that is single-family residential, which they say is a future land use. So which part?
Low density residential.
So the low-density residential is there, and it does say 1 acre in size or larger. What,
Single family residential.
well, the single-family residential in the new document is a future land use.
But it should say single family
Zoning.
residential also in the low density residential.
Do we have a difference in our zoning ordinance? There's so many different residentials. Do we have low density and single, or is?
Yes, we have both, but they're both single-family residential districts in the zoning ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
In the zoning plan, in chapter 17, it suggests that the related zoning ordinance district to that future land use planning district are the same. And so it may not say single family per se in that section of the master plan, but that low density residential translates to low density residential in the zoning ordinance, which is defined, as he noted, as a single family district. So
Okay. I mean, now I
we
think
could
I'm
add
more
the words,
confused.
we could add the word single family in that description there if you thought
Because-
it was appropriate.
Well, right below, like I said, right below low density is single family, and there it's talking about small lot sizes, roughly 1/4 of an acre. So it sounds like it's two separate
Two separate
things.
areas.
I mean, I know we don't need to put all the specifics like we do in the zoning ordinance. That's what the zoning
We don't
ordinance is
want
for,
to.
and this is the 100-foot view.
Nor do we want to.
But, right.
So,
It's
yeah,
just,
There are two
I guess they
separate
should be
categories from
distinct.
density stands. There are two separate categories from a density standpoint, but they are both single-family residential districts. They're both, in actuality, they're single-family in that they only allow for one single-family residence on a lot. And so if you look in the zoning plan in part 17, it says. that-
more clarification.
Right, it says that LR translates, or low density translates to the zoning district low density. And then you go to the ordinance and it specifically says that it's a single family residential district. So if you were ever to change that, you had to go through a process where you change the zoning ordinance. you look back, obviously, to the master plan to see what it says about it. I think it's clear in the master plan that it's the intent that those are single-family residential districts, and that they only allow for one residence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think.
I understand what you're saying, sure. As long as it's single-family residential, that's what the intent is. I understand.
Okay.
As for the streets, thank you.
I'll just comment on the streets and the interconnected. From what I recall and going over it, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong.
For the urban services, I think that, I recall that being discussed, that to ensure that, you know, the neighborhoods weren't being used as throughways.
So we actually changed, based on comments that we received, we changed the language so that it, instead of saying that we would try to connect to existing roads, that we would protect those existing roads, but new roads that were developed as part of those neighborhoods, we would try to get that interconnectivity. So anybody who's existing there is not going to be, we're not going to come to them and say, okay, we're going to turn this into a through road. And ultimately, those roads are private roads that exist there now, so we wouldn't have the ability to do that.
I remember that conversation, okay.
I have a question for Paul. Hey, Paul, back to Mr. Walsey's comments. Before he clarified it, I had thought maybe he was talking about if you have commercial on Godfredson and there's trucks that service those commercial developments, they're not going to be shooting in from Joy Road or coming in from Napier Road, coming to those commercial development on Godfredson.
Well, ultimately, I don't think any trucks would be doing that just because of typical routes, they're going to be coming off of 14. And as he clarified, the concern was that he didn't want the traffic generated, even if it's a single passenger car, or, you know, a passenger vehicle cutting through the neighborhood. But as I said, we did take those comments previously. We had quite a lengthy discussion on it. Made sure we changed the language so we weren't suggesting, which I originally was suggesting it might be appropriate to try to interconnect those. But since the intent or the desire from the folks who lived there was that that wouldn't happen, we changed the language. So that new neighborhoods, yes, we would try to do that incorporation and see if there were ways to create more of that traditional kind of neighborhood design that would interconnect with commercial areas and residential areas, more like the town center that we're striving for in this area, but to protect those existing roads that exist.
Thank you for the answer.
Darrell?
I just want, with Mr. Walsey's thing about the roads, Wayne, am I correct in the street that you live on? Is it a single one-way or is it a two-lane road? Yeah, I can't remember Arcadia and the street that you live on.
It's just a dirt road.
So that would wind up with a cul-de-sac like at the end, so
Exactly.
people can go back out again. It wouldn't be for a through, but made for that way. That's always the impression that I have been under with the existing roads that are over there, especially the USD on this side of the freeway, the north side. And that, because it wouldn't be right for them to go down. Of course, I don't know if commercial or anybody else would be going down a dirt road like that to get through.
Well, just wanting clarification.
Okay.
Sorry.
Bruce, did you have a question? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question.
Yeah, I think that when we had discussions on the roads in the urban services district, the only main road that we talked about doing something about was connecting to Godfredson Road. We didn't talk about connecting anything north of that urban services district. It was all, the streets were all self-contained within that property, outside of going out to Joy Road or to Godfredson Road, but nothing going north. So those other properties would be north primarily, I would assume. But we didn't mention any of the roads going, connecting to any of the existing properties.
Originally, I had made that suggestion, but after comments and discussion, we changed the language. So
All right.
you're correct.
think we've got that one down. Did you want to, the third question about recommended action was either by the board or the planning commission?
Yeah, so the enabling legislation does allow for the board to be the final say, but they would have to exert that by resolution. They would have to have said, we're going to take this option by resolution of the board. They have not done that here in Salem Township. Some communities do, most communities don't. So in Salem Township, the planning commission's action is the final action.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, 2 comments. Maybe it would be a good idea, I had a conversation with Mr. Montagno at one board meeting, I believe it was. Maybe a recommendation, wouldn't it be a good idea that if the board and the planning commission were all in agreement with the master plan, wouldn't that make it a more defensible document? I mean, if the planning commission agrees with this, wouldn't you want to suggest maybe the board to say, hey, why don't you guys take a look at this and adopt this as well, just a suggestion. Also, I understand what you're saying is, the only reason I want to bring clarity to this, I understand what your positions are, but you may not be here in 2 or 3 years, and this may change in 5 years, and then we're up to interpretation on all this stuff in this document. That's why it needs to be clarified. It says, plans for new development within the urban services district shall provide for new roadways or extension of streets to connect with existing or future streets at common boundaries, where such extension is determined to be necessary for continuity in public street system to provide pedestrian and vehicular access to interior lanes, extension of existing streets. So there's some little gray area there, I guess quite a bit of gray area there. That's where my concern came in there. And that's on page, you can read it for yourself, that's on page 90 under streets and roads, and that would be section 5, plans for new development within the urban services district. That kind of opens it up a little bit there to interpretation, extension of existing streets.
Okay, is that there in case there is something that like has to be done, or?
So again, we're talking about new development, and there would not be new development on this existing private road, so there would be no extension of any existing private roads. The intent is that if you're doing a new development, that you would stub those roads out where it logically made sense to provide access to future lands beyond those roads. So in this case, there would be no extension from this existing road because there's no new development happening on this existing road. It's a private road. I understand Mr. Balsey's concern about the language or potential interpretation, but with these existing private roads, there really would be no opportunity for new development. So the owners of the private road would have to agree about that.
Thank you.
And also the last sentence of that, I mean, because it's not a law, it's a plan.
Right.
Says consideration for and consultation with existing residential development is paramount in the design and discussion making process.
I read that.
So I think it's suggesting that this is, the existing residentials is important that they would be in any discussions about.
Right. And that was language that we added after that initial discussion and the concern that was brought up.
Ms. Hamilton.
I think it's important that you have that interconnectivity between developments. If you have a limited number of ways in and out, and you have something catastrophic happen, you can't bring necessary resources into the area, nor can people get out. And I really think that that's probably why you've looked at interconnectivity, because it's about, as Mr. Walsey usually preaches to us, the health, safety, and welfare of your residents. And I don't think you want to limit that you cannot connect to existing private roads, because there could be a point in time in which it truly makes sense to have that be an egress or ingress point. Thank you.
Close there.
Yes, we need that.
I need a motion to close there.
No, we already closed it, that was discussion,
Oh,
yeah.
that was discussion,
That was
okay.
discussion.
Keep
So,
the public hearing.
And then,
We
just
need-
real quick, and then there was that correction that you were discussing on
from
page, what
Mr.
was it,
Yeah,
95?
that's the correction.
On page
It was a
95,
suggestion, could you just go over that?
yeah, so it references the hamlet as an urban services district. It says that it's one of 2 urban service districts. So we just need to remove that because urban service district is used synonymously in this, the bulk of this plan, as well as in ordinances that we've created for the urban service district. So we just need to take that line out.
That's good.
So just literally that first sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
So could we just start it as the Salem hamlet is defined as?
Yes.
Instead of it, because otherwise it is not defined,
Yep.
unless you go to the title, I guess. But, so Salem hamlet is defined as extending from,
Yes.
Salem hamlet.
Oh, that's probably not over here, these are just kind of like my notes, but you're saying
Yeah.
that it's a correction on page 95. Saying the Salem is defined as correction from Mr. Plato. Salem is defined. Correction.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution of adoption for the Salem Township Master Plan update with the condition that the plan be updated to include the following changes. The correction per Mr. Plato that the hamlet is not considered a urban services district. Sound okay?
Second.
Is that a Darrell?
Yes.
Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Art Conley,
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
T.J. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pam Merlot,
Yes.
Bruce Rude, yes. Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
and Daniel Bergari.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Old business items? None. Number 8, approval of the minutes, March 18th, 2019.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of March 18th, 2019 as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of March 18th, 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Minutes are approved. Reports and correspondence. Board of Trustee.
Road project? One besides the paving project for Chubb Road. We're gonna do some major stuff on Joy Road from Curtis to Goffredton. That's shared with Superior Township expenses.
ZBA.
Nothing at this time.
Land Preservation and Conservation.
At this time, we're looking for new projects, and we're also looking forward to an opportunity to possibly help out on the Parks and Rec update.
Okay. Planning consultant review?
Really very minimal work was done this last month. One fence, a couple of interiors, and a new roof. We've got a couple of things coming down the pike. I know you were all familiar with the Kalo project that came before you last month, and we submitted something reviewing that may be coming before you next month. As well as ES Market has been resubmitted and reviewed. We sent that back to them with a request for an update, and so that may be coming back to you next month.
Okay. 10, public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that the goodies are from the flower bar? They are. I want to thank them. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a satisfied tummy down there. Mr. Walsey?
Yes, in regard to the emergency vehicles having access to our roads were built to the standards required by the township, which require to be built to a standard that will allow an emergency vehicle to come down them and access our roads. We've had a number of times, our road, neighbors' roads, we've had emergency vehicles come down those roads, and there's never been an issue. So if someone's implying that there's an issue of emergency vehicles coming down our road, that's not an issue at all. And I don't foresee it to be an issue. If it's an issue, it's the township ordinances that's the issue. We built them to your standards. I certainly expect that the rest of the urban services district is going to have interconnecting roads that's going to allow emergency vehicles to flow through that. But as well, in regard to the existing roads, I don't see any issue with that at all. Thank you.
Mrs. Hamilton, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I kind of wish once Mr. Walsey would listen and get it right. It wasn't a comment about whether emergency vehicles could get up or down a private road or they couldn't. I'm well aware that private roads are constructed in accordance with township standards that allow such use. My issue was, some years ago, a tornado hit Salem Township. It over Curtis Road in North Territorial and went east, took down some structures on Old North Territorial. If we have a catastrophic event such as that, people and resources have to get into a residential community. It's not about whether an emergency vehicle can get in. Being interconnected, Mr. Walsey, allows people options of how to get in and out of their residential community. It's not about emergency vehicles. And again, I appreciate the Planning Commission's willing to let me speak and try to correct this misconception. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one last comment. If I may,
Okay.
Okay.
8:23, the meeting is adjourned. Oops, what?
I was gonna,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
if I may, I'd like to take the January 23rd priorities list,
Yes.
and I'd like to move, see us move on the blight, making of an ordinance for that, and also to amend the Burming ordinance 60 on page 25 in our book. I'd like to add that to that, and then we can concentrate a little bit on our priority list. I'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
And blight.
Put some teeth in the blight ordinance.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
As long as it's not to argue with Linda, if it's something different, yes, but if it's then just, if you could just do it after the meeting.
No, it's
So, is it
not
something
arguing at
different?
all. I'm just continuing the debate.
We're not gonna do, just a second, guys, excuse me.
I won't argue.
No, no one's in order right now except me. Okay.
I'm not going to argue. I'm going to talk about the general plan of the township altogether, about interconnecting roads. If we wanted
The
interconnecting
meeting,
roads,
Mr. Walsey, you're out of order, please. The meeting is adjourned at 8:25.
so you're suppressing what I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. The rest of you guys can stand up and say, hey, let that guy talk. You can say that. Thank you.
It seemed like you talked an awful lot.
I wish you'd listen to what I say. Maybe, wouldn't have to argue about everything then.
Here's your pen back to the